You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. Today your Indiana Hoosiers shook off a sluggish first half to beat Eastern Illinois 90-55, moving their record to 2-0 on this young season. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and we'll break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And we'll start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And the banner moment, or I guess series of moments for me today, was the way that IU came out in the second half. The first half was, as I said, sluggish. That's probably putting it mildly, I would say. But they really came out, took control early in the second half. They had a 13-0 run that was punctuated by, I think it was a layup from Bryson Tucker, who played well in the game, and so they were able to take control of the game at that point. Tucker scored on a baseline out of bounds to go up 17. That capped the 13-0 run. IU gives up a 3 on the other end and goes on a 14-0 run right after that. So really that stretch is where IU took control, played with the completely different level of effort, particularly on the defensive end in the second half, was able to get out in transition where the team really excelled in the second half, as they basically tried to progressively throw higher and higher lobs for Tucker just to see how high he could get up on the break. And so, we'll talk about the poor start to the game and really what was a pretty poor first half. But the team did rebound, ends up winning the game by 35 points in the second half by outscoring Eastern Illinois 54-18. From a metric standpoint, I know some of us hate to talk about that. Coach and I probably don't. From a practicality standpoint, like, it matters that you win some of these games comfortably. And that seemed unlikely based on the way that the first half went. So while there's certainly blame to go for how the first half went, I will give credit to the team and the staff for getting these guys to come out. I know Coach Hunter was talking about defensive rotations and things like that as they came out, as I interviewed him before the second half. And I thought the team seemed to take that messaging to heart. And it led to a 35-point victory for IU that was keyed by that 13-0 run there early in the second half. And our banner moment today, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, now in their 8th season sponsoring the Assembly Call and their 4th as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. As you hopefully know by now, Home Field has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere. And since IU is their flagship school, more high-quality gear with unique IU logos from the past is always right around the corner. Just yesterday, they one-up themselves. The 9 Windiana shirt that has lived in IU lore for a few years now being replaced by the 10 Windiana shirt that they emailed about and texted about just after the game yesterday. They've got designs celebrating Kurt Signetti and this historic IU football season, and what better way to celebrate what IU is doing on the gridiron than with a fresh new Home Field Apparel shirt. I know I have a couple that I have been wearing religiously during these games, may or may not be superstitious. And even IU got a little home field magic when they visited Georgia Tech, who knocked off Miami yesterday. So home field magic is continuing to be in the works. In addition to all the IU stuff, they released their Campus Classic pullovers, and released a number of schools and new things coming out all the time there. So go to Home Field Apparel, great one-stop shop as the holidays approach to get gifts for everyone on your list. I know I've got a couple things that we ordered for gifts and maybe a few things for myself. But no matter what you buy from Home Field, it's going to be comfortable and the colors will last. So go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Somebody on this show has a birthday later this week, I'm told, so they may be interested in gifts from Home Field Apparel. So just do with that what you will. But again, go to homefieldapparel.com, wear one for the team. All right, now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team, which today is Coach, who has recovered from what I'm told was a long day in Bloomington yesterday, but he looks spry as ever and ready to go. So, Coach, opening thoughts on the 90-55 win today.
Well, first of all, I'm size 4X for the home field stuff and for the birthday stuff. If anyone's interested, you can DM me for my address, and I thank you ahead of time. Tale of two halves in this one. The first half was just absolutely sluggish and sloppy, especially on the defensive end, allowing Eastern Illinois to take a lead, and we saw what could happen when defense intensity was played in the second half, and that was the difference. I think there's a couple reasons if you want to find those excuses, which I don't buy into. The noon tip, and you're playing a lesser opponent, but Indiana has to play against the game, and they did not do that in the first half. They obviously got a talking to by Coach Woodson in the second half because it was 100% different in the second half. They played a lot harder. They ran the floor a lot better in the second half, and they just simply dominated as they should have throughout the whole game. I saw a comment in the chat already. Are we a first half team, second half team? Probably a little both, to be honest. But you want to smooth that out. We've talked on this show, Andy, for a long time about Indiana being consistent from game to game, month to month, half to half. This game, again, did not answer that question in anyways about is this team a consistent basketball team right now. It did show their worst, what they could be at their worst, I think, in the first half, and it showed what they could be at their very best in the second half, and we'll break down the reasons for both as we finish the show. But Indiana gets a win. They get a win by a margin that won't hurt them in the metrics. They're 2-0. They get stuff on tape. They got some players, Kanan Carlisle saw the ball go in the basket, which can only be a good thing for the Hoosiers going forward. And so, early season, you see a lot of this happening when you're watching college basketball early. Good teams struggling early and then turning it on late, and I think Indiana just falls right into that pattern. It's not something to like, but it does happen, and I'm with you. So proud of the guys coming back in the second half and learning the lesson from the halftime talk and just really playing the way Indiana should. So good win. All wins are good. The play wasn't always the best, but you got to take them, and you got the metric win that you needed, which is important.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of get the first half out of the way because we can't gloss over it. But let's talk about that first, and then we'll move on to brighter topics. What did you see in terms of the way that Eastern Illinois was attacking IU defensively? One of the things that I felt like they started to do about midway, maybe a little bit past midway through, was they're really trying to put Ballo in middle ball screens, put him in conflict with figuring out how to do figure out what coverages they wanted to run on those ball screens. And again, Coach Hunter talked about that a little bit coming out. That seemed to give IU some trouble. I think some of it was effort based on IU, but I will give a little bit of credit to got to give some credit to the opponent for parts of that. So what did you see them do that was successful in the first half, and then maybe how did IU counteract that when they came back out of the locker room?
It all comes down to ball pressure, I believe, and penetration. And I thought Eastern Illinois had easy paths to the rim, and then that forced help. And then they did a good job of pivoting and kicking back out. And some of the threes, Eastern Illinois hit 5 out of 10 threes. Indiana, historically, in the last few years, has had trouble when people can penetrate and they help, and then the ball gets kicked out. Now, this was a little different than point-to-wing threes, which Indiana has given up in the past. This was more drive inside the lane. A lot of the defense collapses, and then they pivot and kind of what I call a European cut, where you cut behind where the drive came from. You just replace the driver with the shooter. And then you couple that, Andy, with poor closeouts. Then Mbako had one. I thought Mbako was great, by the way. I think Mbako and Tucker tonight are the two players that I really, really, really enjoyed, and we'll talk about them individually. But there was one where Mbako just was not intense and kind of lunged, and I think they're overplaying their closeouts right now, or they're closing out too close to the players and out of control. I always believe you got to play the drive on a closeout and then contest the shot, be the second man off the floor. I think those two things. I agree with you about the drop coverage has not been solid for Indiana. The difference when we go from this half to the second half was just flat out intensity, and I think it was better ball pressure, and they could not get in a flow. And then when Indiana did give up something, the recovery was much more intense. So I thought their effort was poor in the first half. I just think they were going through the motions defensively in that half, which allowed 37 points by Eastern Illinois, and they only end up with they didn't even get close to that in the second half. So
they had 18 in the second half. Yeah.
Ball screen coverage, ball pressure, and then just playing with a passion. You have to play with a passion defensively from the tip-off to the end. Indiana did not do that in the first half.
Well, and I think the other thing that led to that IU was much better in was just being able to get out in transition and get easy baskets in the second half. A lot of that was driven by, one, creating turnovers, but two, just being able to be that intense, get the ball off the rim, push the ball off the floor. There were a number of really good plays where it was, 2-3 passes and it's a layup on the other end for IU. And I just thought, for a team that has talked about wanting to get out and play faster, you can't do that in the first half when you're busy taking the ball out of the basket and having to do that. I just thought some of those things, and that all tied back to the intensity defensively that was present in a couple short stretches in the first half, but just not for long enough at all. And so I think your point was spot on in terms of what they were able to do by just better intensity, better effort, more urgency, really crashing the glass, but also still managing to get out and run in transition and push the pace in the way that they wanted to. So I think that was, at least in my view, what really turned the tide in the second half. And so as we try to put that behind us, as the team did, we'll talk a little bit of individual play. And let's start with MacKenzie Andak. He again leads the team in scoring, 18 points. Renew and Balo not far behind at 17, but he ends up with 18 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple steals in 27 minutes. And I thought, once again, he was, they got him going early. He scored 5 points pretty quickly, and then he didn't get the ball a whole lot. Didn't feel like in stretches, but there was a stretch at the beginning of the second half where he just did a little bit of everything. Was able to, create, drive, get to the free throw line, got a bucket, pursued a rebound that kicked ahead for a basket, kicked out to Miles Rice for a 3 that he missed, but was a good shot and an unselfish play and things like that. So I just thought he continued to show growth. I agree with you in the first half. I think at least 2 of the threes from Eastern Illinois were closeouts of his, but he really ramped things up in the second half, and I thought continued to show really, really nice growth in his game from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, and I'll talk about this in the last segment. I just think Mbako has had 2 incredible basketball games. We can point out those closeouts; those weren't good, but overall, Mbako just was solid today in all aspects. To get Indiana going in the second half, he had on ball was better. He punched the ball out and then recovered it and led to a basket, I think. And then in a 6-0, 7-0 run, which went from 43-42 deficit up to, it went 49-45 off of his steal. He got 2 steals. And then the rebounds, 2-handed rebounds. So, a guy's locked in when he's going and pursuing the basketball after, with 2 hands. I just thought his passing, his cutting, he had a nice dunk off a post feed in the first half. He cut real hard. And I thought his drives were good, too. He's able to beat people off the drives. I still think he's a 4. And when he's matched up against 4, then he can drive, then he can, cut off screens and all of those things. I think that's the best use for him as opposed to the 3. And I think he can guard that, at least on the perimeter. He's not exposed to as many closeouts or whatever when he's the 4. But that young man just has brought it the first 2 games. 31 and 18 in 2 games if you're just looking at points. But I'll put the points aside, Andy, and I'm looking at all of the intangibles. He has really been a spark. I would continue to love to see them run more stuff for him. I know in a game like this, the inside guys are going to have at it because the talent, right? But Mbako's our best all-around player, I think, as far as offensively. And when he's locked in on the defensive end as well, then that spurs his offense. Yeah, he had a great game today.
Yeah, and let's kind of use that to dovetail into the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which was the play of Renew and Balo. They each finished with 17. Balo with 9 rebounds. Malik had 6. Balo had 3 assists, 3 blocks. And so, I think numbers-wise, a good game for those guys. IU really made it a point early in the first half. They were dumping it into them. Balo made some nice passes out of the double team that led to an Mbako 3, the one, cut for a dunk that you mentioned. I thought they had some success with that. And then I thought there were times when they got a little bogged down trying to get the ball into the 2 of them. And I think some of that is a work in progress, probably, of those guys figuring out how to play best with one another. But what are you seeing from those two? I think from a production standpoint, they've been really good. You took advantage of their opportunities and the advantages that they have over a smaller team like this. But still feels to me like lineup wise a work in progress. I think that ties in with what you said with Mbako playing the 4.
I tell you, in general, I love this about those two 5s. I think we start 2 5s and a 4 in our starting lineup, and I will go to my grave thinking that. But they run the floor extremely well. I saw that in Balo at Tennessee. He continued to do that today. Renew, and what really sparked Indiana was getting those bigs out early. And as you said, sometimes the ball never hit the floor. Next thing you know, Balo's getting a dunk or Renew's getting a play at the rim. That is a recipe to get post players baskets, but easy offense for your team. And I love the way they run. I also love the way they pass. And when they are on the floor together, they're doing a lot of high-low stuff. And if you can go high-low and post up and just catch and score, Renew is better with his feet at catching with his back to the basket and defense between him and the basket, of making some moves and throwing his shoulders and scoring. I think Balo really needs to get the post play off the move, and they're really trying to do that. They run some actions where they will curl Renew into the lane. But I don't think Indiana's really solid with just throwing someone on the block and posting up as they have in the past. They have to get creative in moving them into the post. But I wrote this down. Their post passing and their ability to run the floor is really, really been outstanding, I think, early on. I thought Balo's effort tonight, Andy, was 1,000 times better, at least in the second half, than in the first half in Game 1. I didn't think he played extremely hard in Game 1, and he was all right maybe in the first half. Second half, he was very, very intense. We need to see that out of Balo going forward, especially in the big games.
Yeah, I think as we get into different matchups, I'll be interested to see how they work out those guys playing together and what's effective. But I think you've seen enough to be excited. I think you've seen some occasions where it's like, I don't know, is it too clogged in the lane and things like that. But I think with some of the new pieces, I think there's a little bit of growing pains. They had some errant passes trying to run some of those high-low sets and get the ball inside to one another. But I also thought there was a really nice play. I forget who who initiated it, but they kind of talked about in the broadcast. It was kind of like a tic-tac-toe. They basically passed it down the lane, got Balo in a ball screen, gave him the ball about the free throw line, dumped it right down to Renew and got a dunk.
I want to say about the passing. They're very good passing. That little post-to-post quick pop. When they force it in there, that's when they have trouble passing. When they're staring down that high-low pass, I'm glad you mentioned that. They do have trouble when the whole defense is focused in on the post. That's why I say you got to get people on the move and you got to take advantage of the defense. But when they're on the move, I think the post-to-post passing is better.
Yeah. I want to hit one of the guards on before we break. I know you want to talk Tucker. I think we can probably do that as we get into meaningful moments. But Trey Galloway, 8 assists in today's game in 18 minutes, had 9 and 17 minutes before. So, what he was able to do was emblematic. There was a number of guys that had good assist numbers. IU had 26 assists on 38 makes, and I think it was 12 of 14 makes or 14 of 16 makes in the first half or something like that. But I thought he again came in, just feels like a good role for him to be able to step into, be a facilitator, continues to do some good things on pick and roll with Balo in particular, but also he was really kicking out, finding other guys. Tucker, he got a couple buckets for. And so I think you like what you see from him in that role, coming off the bench, being able to be that spark, being able to be a facilitator, and 17 assists in, I think, 35 minutes in 2 games is pretty darn good. So what are you seeing from Galloway in this kind of revised role this season?
I think he needs to be on the floor as much as he can health-wise right now. And, you could debate whether that means in the starting lineup or quickly come off the bench. I think there was a time when there was a struggle handling the ball where Woodson actually went to Gallo and brought him back in after taking him out. I don't know the extent of his, in shape and his minutes, if he's on a minutes restriction or whatever. But the thing that Gallo has been freed up because there's more talent is that he can just be Trey Galloway again. He doesn't have to be 3 or 4 different things like he had to when Xavier Johnson got hurt. He had to score, he had to defend, he had to be a passer, and I think the weight of that team last year just weighed on Gallo throughout. Now he can come in and just do the things that he's always good at. And we've talked about when point guards are getting assists, this Indiana offense will click. When they're not getting assists and it becomes just one-on-one, go get buckets and stationary, that's when the Indiana offense kind of bogs down. And so the reason that the second half was because Galloway's starting to move. His pass, his two-handed pass on the breakaway when the ball got thrown out to him near half court, and he just kind of no look threw it down the court for an, I hope that was assist. I think it was. It had to be, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think a guy took it. Yeah. And he still jumps in the air and makes some turnovers. He had 2 turnovers, and as a coach, you're going to point out everything. But man, 17 assists in 2 games. If that continues with the talent that's on this team, then again, how are you going to guard him? How are you going to put together a scouting report? But I think his minutes need to go up as long as, and I'm not being critical of Woodson here because it's probably because of getting over the knee surgery thing. Once he is back to 100%, I think he's going to get major minutes, whether that's a starting role or off the bench, because Indiana's better when he's on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you talk about. I kind of found myself thinking the same thing. Is the more he's on, particularly in the first half, his time on the floor was when they looked the best. And I think it is a slippery slope a little bit as you start thinking about, do you put him in the starting lineup? Because obviously that would be at the expense of Carlisle. And I was really happy to see him have a couple of shots go in, and we'll touch on him a little bit later as well. I think for now you kind of ride with it how you have. I think being able to have a guy come off the bench and be able to provide what Galloway does, I think it just turns into the not who starts but who finishes type of conversation. I think there will be times that you're going to see him play more. I think Woodson got frustrated with Rice, who lost the ball kind of driving into traffic, and that's when I think is the moment that you talked about where he put him back in and tried to settle things down. So I think again, as you're playing him with some of the backups, he's a good steadying influence of what you're going to get out there. So I don't think time to change that yet, but I do think it's a question of how many minutes he can handle. He certainly felt like he was healthy when he tried to dunk on that guy. So I guess that's a good sign, at least in his own confidence in his knee, but we'll see. But a really good start for him. And I think exciting to see him in this role. I know a lot of people talked about that as you went through last season of like, this is the role he was forced to play last week is probably not the one he's best suited for. And I think what you've seen so far perhaps is. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hit some meaningful moments that you might have missed as we continue to break down IU's 90-55 victory. We'll also go inside the numbers. We'll listen to the assembly call. Stick with us.
Hi, this is AJ Moye. What's the only thing better than upsetting Duke in the Sweet 16? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach for the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Coach Brian Tonsoni, and we are breaking down IU's 90-55 victory over Eastern Illinois. And now it is time for
meaningful moments that you might have missed.
This segment, as always, is brought to you by our friends over at the Hoosier Ticket Project, where they help individuals and families experience Indiana University athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, you can visit HoosierTicketProject.org. Again, that's HoosierTicketProject.org. So, Coach, as we think meaningful moments, I think probably a few different ways to go here. We'll mention a couple. You touched on this with Bryson Tucker, and I think the play that you had mentioned was probably not one that people would have missed, but he was the beneficiary of. We talked about really trying to get the ball out and push it in transition. The play that you mentioned, Luke Goody gets the rebound, kicks it ahead to Galloway, who kind of has a touch pass down to Tucker for a score. I think that was emblematic of a couple things. One, how well IU was doing at trying to get the ball out in transition and outlet quickly, get down the floor, but also Tucker being able to really run the floor and showcase his athleticism. Had a couple lobs there, had a couple nice drives, kind of sweeping drives to the basket that he was able to score on, hit a mid-range jumper. And I know that you mentioned him as a guy that you were really impressed with early on in the show, so wanted to make sure that we circle back to him. But I think some nice, meaningful moments from him as he was able to really settle into a bit more of a groove. This time, get some easy baskets instead of taking some of the tougher shots that he came in and took in the opener.
Yeah, he just is impressive. He's just smooth out there on the basketball floor. I'd have to rewatch again to grade him defensively. I don't see anything right off the top that says he's struggling defensively, but man, he's in double figures tonight. He's got that nice little pull-up game. He runs the floor well, and I just think that he was the one who was not talked about in preseason. Everyone kind of would talk about everyone else and coming in and who's going to play, and then all of a sudden, very minimal talk about Tucker, and he gets 20 minutes today. And I think there are 20 meaningful minutes, especially in that second half. I did write down that he was very active with his hands defensively, and so yeah, he's just come on when he's been called on and been ready to play and do what he does. He obviously has to learn shot selection and when to take shots and when not to take shots. That's just part of a freshman coming in. But, man, it seems like he's had a smoother transition to the game, and probably because of all the talent around, than MacKenzie had last year as a McDonald's All-American. And so, 20 minutes is what I think I would expect him to get and that play, but he is really going to make it difficult for Woodson to not, keep him at that level if he keeps playing with this efficiency.
Yeah, he was plus 27 in 20 minutes, so pretty good, I would say. And I thought he let the game come to him a little bit more. I felt like the other in the opener, he came out just kind of hunting shots a little bit, and he was able to get some easy baskets this time on a nice drive to the basket, and again was the beneficiary of some of those lobs from a couple different teammates. So I thought good stuff from him and something you can see him grow into. And I think I mentioned this on the previous show that he played felt like he played a bunch of different positions. You could have argued he was the 4 in some lineups in the first game and the 2 in others. He and Galloway were the backcourt when Woodson went to some of the subbing lineups, and he was playing the 2 guard, brought the ball up a little bit, initiated some offense. So I think they like what they have with him just from a versatility standpoint. So look forward to seeing that grow with him over the course of the season. Coach, meaningful moments for you.
Yeah, this is just in general for everyone to watch because it happens to Indiana, it happened to Eastern Illinois, and I wrote it down when Eastern Illinois got an illegal screen set at the top coming off a high ball screen. And, everyone says, oh, you got to get set and you got to do this, and it's always the guy creating the foul that gets the attention of the announcers and us as the fans. But really what happens a lot of times, and what people may miss, and I miss it at times too, is the ball handler takes off too early. And that's what happened in this one today. And it was a key moment too because it was right in that stretch where Indiana started to dominate and Eastern Illinois just couldn't get anything to go, and then you pick up a foul. But the ball handler has to wait until the screener is set or very close to being set to initiate his action because it's hard to stop when you meet someone halfway. So watch for that when you're watching college basketball or you're watching Indiana set ball screens. Does the ball handler wait for the screen to be close or set before he takes the defender into the action? Because that's when a lot of those illegal screens get set. And so sometimes it's not the fault of the screener. It's the fault of the point guard actually taking off too soon. So it just hit me that it was a blatant one today, and I thought that would be good to share with all of you.
Yeah, that guy was like a bulldozer who came up and set the one for Eastern Illinois. And I thought Hatton on IU, I thought he had gotten away with one, I think earlier in the same possession for IU that he had managed to slide by with, and they weren't going to let him get away with the second one.
And it's a point of emphasis, and I know fans groan every game I go to when it gets called because it seems like it gets called an awful lot. But you have to get set. You have to keep your legs inside your shoulders. You can't get wide. You can't lean your hips out. And it is such a fast game right now with the athleticism that is out there that is going to get called an awful lot.
Yeah, two other quick ones for me. Again, based on the fact I think I saw Kathy write this in the chat, probably not one that people missed. IU did go to the all bench lineup for a little bit in the first half. They got outscored 7-0. I think after they had taken a 5-point lead or so. Now you did see what you like to see is Woodson adjusted that in the second half, mixed and match a little bit differently with those guys. But I think again that's something to watch. I understand these games trying to get guys minutes, but go back a little bit to what we've talked about in prior seasons is are the guys really put in the greatest situation to succeed and make the most of those minutes if they're only playing with other reserves and you don't have some of the higher end players in the game with them. Again, didn't see that in the second half. I don't think as you move forward into the South Carolina game, wouldn't think there'll be a lot of opportunity for that anyway. So could be a moot point later. And there was one other thing on Mbako that I wanted to hit on. I need to figure out where in the world I put these notes here, but there was a.
While you're doing that, let me talk about the lineup, because right
Sure.
before he went to the all sub lineup, he had a small lineup with Renew at the 5 and had a 9-2 run.
Yep.
And again, the starting lineup played well together, and the two bigs, and I know it's been talked about year after year after year, that played well. But Indiana actually has two kinds of offenses that they can run. Is that a plus, or is that kind of confusing? When you have the two bigs, you're going to emphasize one thing, and then when you go to one big, you emphasize another. I am a belief that you got to have Renew or Balo out there at all times, and if they need a rest, then alternate them at some point. Play them together, then play one, then bring one in back for the other. That's no disrespect to the Hatton, the young man Hatton. But I think maybe Hatton plays with the Renew in the game as well. And what you're talking about, Andy, and what we've talked about an awful lot is that sometimes the subs need a Renew so the defense can take attention, or they need to play with Mbako because now the scouting report's going to be there for the subs to really elevate their ability. When you put the 5 subs out there together, it might, there's not that flow of having one of your better players out there at all time. That'll be something that we'll continue to monitor.
Yeah, the other, so I did find my notes. This was another Mbako sequence that I thought was, I think with him, in a lot of ways, some of the stuff that you heard heading into, you had the off-court incident before last season. I think you saw some maturity type things with him last year. And this year has been the exact opposite. There was toward the beginning of the second half, there's a play where Rice, essentially passed up an easy kick out to him for a 3. And drove the ball in. I think on the possession eventually is where Mbako got fouled and went and hit 2 free throws. But, did not a couple things with him, easy to get frustrated in that scenario. He had really been the guy with the hot hand, would have had a wide open 3. But what you saw him do in response to that, it was a couple possessions later, he's in the same situation and kicked it out to Rice for a 3. He wasn't being selfish and kind of taking it back on his own to say, hey, I'm going to score this time. And those things. Not long after that, pursued that rebound where he tipped it out to himself and then threw it ahead to Renew for a dunk. Got a steal and a dunk to put IU up 6. Just really responded within the game and didn't sulk, didn't get upset that a teammate didn't find him when he probably thought he was open, because he was open. And just did things the right way in the minutes after that really helped spark that run for IU. And I just I think you owe him a lot of credit. You owe the coaching staff a lot of credit for the way they've been able to kind of build him up over the course of last season and then see the leap that he has continued to take heading in here. I just thought some, small things that he did and the way he responded to situations in the game that I was really impressed with.
Yeah, I think he's had 2 complete games. And when I say complete games, I know there are moments where you don't play well or you make a mistake. No player has a 100% perfect game, but he is doing a lot. And you can tell he's mentally locked in when he's doing those little things. As a coach, when you see players doing all the aspects of the game, all the fundamentals, then you know they're locked in. And sometimes he can play that, and you can contribute to winning when maybe your shot is off a little bit. And so many young people, if they're not scoring, they're not doing the other things, because so much of our sports society is wrapped up in points. But you can win games with all the other little things. And Mbako is doing more than just scoring. And he's scored, the most points, and he's been our leading scorer in 2 games. And we're talking about the other things. That's fantastic for that young man.
Absolutely.
And for the Hoosiers.
Absolutely. All right. Well, now it's time to go inside the numbers, which is brought to you by Jackson Hewitt. tax services. And if you live in Bloomington or the surrounding area, make sure and if you want to get your taxes done right, make sure you contact our friend and Chat Mob Hall of Famer, Megan Mahaffey, and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334 or visiting jacksonhewitt.com. Coach, I'll throw it to you first here. What stats stood out to you from the game?
Well, the one that I really want to start out with is 26 assists on 38 made baskets. And then I'll take that to the first half, too. They had 14 assists on 16 made baskets. And Coach Woodson said after the first game there was not a lot of ball movement, there's not a lot of player movement, there's a lot of standing around. And while that was a lot better tonight. And so that's what you want to see. Evaluate game one. Go into game two. We talked about the assists from Galloway. Rice had some nice assists, too. I don't know how many total he had real quick. He had 5 assists. Mbako had 4 assists. You talked about sharing the basketball. Were there more moments where the ball needed to pop one more time, 2 more times? Yes. But it seemed like there was progress from game one to game two. And I am a firm believer when you get out and run, you're going to drive up your assist numbers. When you make that extra pass, now you become harder to guard regardless of what offense you run. And when it's not ISO basketball, pass, and you go make a play to make a basket, when it is ball popping, Indiana is going to be tough because they're very talented. But 26 assists was a fantastic number on 38 made baskets. And I think the guys are looking to make that extra pass more than they did early in the season, more consistently, at least tonight, as opposed to the other night.
Yeah, a couple others for me, largely second half numbers that were impressive. 32 points in the paint in the second half, 20 fast break points in the second half. Shot 25 layups, at least the way it's categorized on the live stats in the second half, and scored 1.54 points per possession in the second half. I just, again, so much of that was being able to get the ball out in transition and go. And those numbers showed up in the easy shots that they were able to generate for themselves, and the unselfishness that you talked about with being able to pass the ball and find open guys for easy shots over and over again. So I think a lot of those types of numbers are pretty huge and created massive gaps in that, because the points in the paint was not that far off in the first half, and it ended up 56-24. The fast break points were not that dissimilar in the first half. It ends up 31-13. In that. And so I think, again, just underscores how well they played in the second half as they did that. As with anything, would be remiss not to talk about 3-point shooting a bit. IU ends up 6 of 18 for the game, 4 of 11 in the second half. And what I will say is a couple of the guys who were able to see some go down is really what I wanted to touch on in the 3-point shooting. Luke Goody getting a couple to go down, almost had another one go in that really was in the midst of that run. Seeing Cannon Carlisle hit a couple late hopefully gives him some confidence. I thought they tried to do things early in the game to at least get the ball in his hands a little bit more. I don't know if they're running stuff to get shots for him. He did, take an elbow jumper off a curl in one scenario, but I did feel like they're trying to figure out how to get him comfortable. And as we talked about the other night, just trying to figure out his new role on this team compared to what he was asked to do at Stanford. But I think a good confidence boost for him. He was still active defensively for the most part and doing some good things. I think just missed a lob where he tried to lay it in that went off. So I think big for him to see the ball go through the basket, and would probably argue the same thing for Luke Goody as well. So any comments on those two guys, Coach, as you kind of watch them over the course of this game?
Yeah, anytime you move from one situation to another, you got to figure out how you fit in. Carlisle was the main option on his team out west last year, and now he's coming in and he's got to play a different role, and it takes a while to figure that out. And the one thing I liked in game one is that he was locked in defensively. So he seems like a high character guy, at least from 2 games watching from afar, that. Again, if your offense isn't clicking, then sometimes you see young people struggle in the other aspects. I don't see that. I don't see bad body language. I don't see anything like that from the young man. So it's awful nice to see a shot go down, because you don't take shots trying to miss. So I think he's an athlete. I think he's a component that Indiana is going to need. I think he can score some points once he figures out how to take shots and where to take shots in this offense. And so it's good to see that, because then it'll hopefully carry over into practice and into the next game. Luke Goody's a veteran Big Ten player. There was no concern. He was going to have shots go down at some point. It was just a matter of time. But you do like to see it with him as well. I want to go back to the fast break points too, 31-13. Like this team that we played was 330 in Ken Palm. That's why it was so concerning in the first half. But in the second half, so you also got to take the margin and all of that into consideration too. But the thing I like, despite playing a really poor team, is I think this team wants to get out and run, and I think that's a benefit. So when you start playing tougher opponents, you got to get those easy baskets, and it comes from your defense and it comes from your rebounding. And so when Indiana's doing that, they had a great night rebounding here. You can get out and go. And when you have that attitude of getting out and go, then kids are more confident in scoring points and taking threes off the break as well as dunks off the break. The 31-13 fast break points is good for the stat of the game, but it's also maybe a point of emphasis that is an adjustment that's been made that's been good in comparison to last few years. And so let's hope that continues.
Yep. Only other stat that I'll throw out before we take a break. We talked a little bit about the defensive intensity in the second half. That manifested itself in holding Eastern Illinois to 5 for 30 from the field, 2 for 10 from 3. They did make 6 free throws, but just again, tale of two halves, night and day type effort from IU, and that really showed up in the defensive numbers in the second half for sure. All right, so. As we move ahead, we will be back to hand out our game balls and the Hoosier Hustle Award. We'll discuss a lingering question and look ahead to IU's next opponent. That's all next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and we are breaking down Indiana's 90-55 win over Eastern Illinois to move the Hoosiers to 2-0 on the young season. It's now time for our game balls presented by our friends Allie and James over at Bloom Environmental. They want to help you protect your home's air quality, and the best way to do that is to stop water at the source. They were voted the best. I feel like I might need to rewrite that. They're voted the best of B-Town in basement services for 4 years running. Their basement waterproofing and crawl space encapsulation is the best defense your home can have against mold growth and structural damage. You can mention Assembly Call and get 10% off of your system. Call today for a free estimate, or if you just want to hear Allie talk about Kurt Signetti for an hour. You can learn more over at bloomenviro.com. Again, that's bloomenviro.com. All right, Coach. Well, it is time for game balls coming into this. MacKenzie Andak, Bryson Tucker, and Miles Rice were all tied with 1 apiece. I have a feeling that tie will be broken today, but who gets your game ball?
I'm going Mbako. I'm just so impressed with his all-around game. Gets Indiana off to a good start with 5 quick points. I'm impressed with his 2-hand rebounds in traffic, his poke-away steals. He got some assists too, I think. What was the total? I mentioned it earlier. He had 4 assists, 7 rebounds. He had a couple turnovers in there, but I just think in the first 2 games he's been our best player, and there's quite a few players who you can talk about being, obviously extremely talented roster, but Mbako has shown a lot of improvement, and tonight I thought he was the most consistent player throughout the game for the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I thought he got off to a good start, got the dunk off of the nice cut, hit a 3 early, really set the tone that he was back in it. Had that sequence that I mentioned in the meaningful moment. I just thought he was really fantastic from start to finish. Obviously, a few moments here and there. I know we talked about a couple of closeouts. I don't think probably fair to expect perfection from anybody at this point, but I thought he did so much to contribute to winning today. Really came out intense as they started the second half, made a number of plays there. So he picks up his second game ball of the season to take the lead there. And next up, it is time for the Hoosier Hustle Award, which is sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services.
The Hoosier Real Hustle Award.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, reminding you to check out our friends at Evansville Security Services. Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, Evansville Security Services has been providing off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals since 2001. In other words, they're in the business of prevention and peace of mind. And remember, prevention cannot be measured. To learn more about how Evansville Security Services can help you preserve your peace of mind by preventing bad outcomes, visit evansvillesecurityservices.com. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com.
All right, Coach. This one might be a little tougher than the other one, but who gets your Hustle Award today?
Oh, there's absolutely very little hustle in the first half by anyone in the Indiana.
That's inarguable. So
and then in the second half, like, you got all kinds of people you could pick for Hustle Award in the second half because they played with a lot of intensity in that second half. I'm going to go Galloway, a block, a steal, 8 assists, some hustles, tried to, yam one on that dude. Galloway is recovering from a knee injury, 6-year senior, Indiana veteran. I thought he had a really good game, and I thought probably he and Mbako were the two players maybe in the first half that did play with some decency. So I'm going to lean Galloway on the Hoosier Hustle today.
Yeah, I leaned him as well. I think what you said, I was leaning that way, and what you said about the first half kind of pushed me over the edge to give it to him because I thought he was the one guy in the first half who really brought it, made the ball move, made a lot of things happen, more so than some others. So, yeah, I'll give it to him again. 8 assists in 18 minutes, hit a nice floater off an offensive rebound, I think, that he was able to put in, and just thought did a good job running the team when he was out there and getting guys involved, getting people in the right spots and getting people the ball in positions where they could score. So I'll go with him. I think Tucker would have been the other guy who I gave some consideration to on that end in terms of the way he ran the floor. I thought Goody had some nice hustle plays as you look at what he did. And I thought we talked about Balo and Renew running the floor. I thought there's arguments to be made for a number of guys based on second half play, but I thought Galloway was somebody who brought it in the first half. So he will get the nod for me as well. That's his second of the season. Also breaking a tie between him and Malik Renew and Cannon Carlisle. So each of those guys have one, and Galloway has got his second. All right, so now it's time for lingering questions as we look ahead for IU. I think, Coach, biggest lingering question for me is how do you prevent a first half like what we saw today? Can make arguments that it's a kind of hangover effect, maybe actually not hangover effect, maybe actual hangover following the Michigan game yesterday, noon tip, all those things, lots of built-in excuses, I think, for the way that they came out and played, but you cannot come out and play that way against better opponents, and you can't assume that you're going to turn it on and outscore everybody. So as you look for that, I think the next game, you got Saturday game, 3:00 tip against South Carolina, an SEC opponent coming in. I think you can more easily get yourself up for that game. But there's plenty of other games like this, maybe not against, a team ranked as low as what Eastern Illinois was, but there are other games at home over the course of the non-conference that you're expected to win and win handily. How do you prevent against a repeat of this kind of performance is what we saw in the first half?
Well, I'm going to take a phrase from a great coach who is just across the parking lot. Fast, physical, and relentless, smart, disciplined, and poised from the tip-off to the end of the game. And if you're not, then you're going to get caught in one of these situations where you get beat by someone that you're more talented than, and you're going to get caught in a situation where you get a big loss by a team that's equal or better talented than you. You have to play 32 minutes of basketball or 40 minutes of basketball. I'm stuck in high school. 40 minutes of basketball from the tip. You have to be fundamentally sound. I thought Indiana's fundamentals were very, very poor in the first half. I thought they out-talented in the second half. Ryan talked after the first game about some cracks. Those cracks are still there, meaning areas of improvement. And we will win games based on talent, but winning the key games, you have to combine talent with being fast, physical, relentless, smart, disciplined, and poised. We're seeing that across the parking lot. And we need to see it for 40 minutes at the basketball. That's how you prevent that half. You just got to keep emphasizing that, get in the film room, and demand, and good things will happen.
Yep. Coach, any other lingering questions for you as we before we look ahead to South Carolina?
For me, it's how quickly Galloway can get back into a starter minute role off of his, pitch count or whatever minutes restriction if he's on one, because again, his play, I think that's a lingering question, because we're going to need him to play more than 18 minutes the way he's producing and passing the basketball. So that's probably the lingering. Your lingering question was mine, is consistency. We've said it from the start of the season, is consistent play offensively and defensively, complementary basketball. So that was mine, but right now it's Galloway, because I think he needs to play middle 20 or more than that, high 20 minutes at this production level.
Yeah, so looking ahead to South Carolina, that game is at 3:00 next Saturday. South Carolina was one of the bigger surprises in college basketball last season, picked to finish close to the bottom of the SEC, had a really good season, made the NCAA tournament. I think some of their metrics may have, signaled they were maybe not as good as their record showed that they were, but really had an impressive season. So as they looked into this season, still were picked kind of middle of the SEC, middle to lower part of the SEC. They opened up with a loss at home to North Florida on Monday. They did come back and beat South Carolina State on Friday night, and then they play Towson on Tuesday at home before they travel to IU. So certainly not a great start for them as they drop a home bye game to a team like North Florida, but a team that I think will be ready to play and is going to be solid. Certainly, I don't think they'll be as good as they were a year ago, but it'll be the first real test for this IU team in a real game. You could certainly argue that the Tennessee exhibition was a tougher game than what South Carolina will be, but I think a chance for IU to prove themselves. This was, as you think, bracketology and all those kinds of things. It was battle for Atlantis and this home game against South Carolina. Some of the luster comes off the home game against South Carolina with their early loss. So it's one where you really got to take care of business and may not look great on your resume by the time the end of the season rolls around, but at least it's a power conference team that you're playing at home. So an important game for IU to come out and play well. Coach, any quick thoughts on South Carolina before we wrap things up?
No, it's just another opportunity to get better. And there are no must wins, but it's one that you just need to boost yourself. You need to go into Atlantis 4-0 and playing better basketball. I think the emphasis of South Carolina is playing closer to 40 minutes of good basketball. I think that's, the value of that took a little hit with their upset in game one. But that doesn't mean that they're not still an SEC school that's capable of coming in and doing damage to the Indiana Ball Club. So you need to be focused in from the start.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show, and remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. You can use the promo code HOME23 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. And with that, it is time for last call. Coach, final thoughts on IU's 90-55 win today?
Thank goodness for that second half. It made for our conversation to be a lot more enjoyable. And so, yeah, Indiana basketball 2-0, playing a lot better to start the year than they did last year, despite the first half. It was a great, great adjustment, and I think it was just a less paint in the locker room adjustment that Coach Woodson did. But he ought to keep that one, in the video reel and just hit play again if it happens again, because it obviously worked well. So congratulations. No game's perfect. And sometimes it's your response to adversity inside the game that matters and develops character as a team. And so that's the benefit of this as well. And then I have to say congratulations to the football team. Andy, it's just unbelievable. There were so many people in and around the stadium. The tailgating was different. The stadium was even more packed. There's zero room to move. And 10-0 Indiana football. I know we're a basketball postgame show, but wow, what a wonderful time to be an Indiana football fan. And it's fun for this guy who's had season tickets since 1985 to be seeing 10-0 going into Columbus. Congratulations to Coach Signetti and the squad as well.
Yep, absolutely. I guess I'll kind of give quick football thoughts first before I wrap up with basketball. Yeah, we went to a brewery here. The Alumni Association locally had an event, so lots and lots of IU fans there for that. Exciting to watch them win the 10th. It was a little bit of a nail biter, more closer than I think anybody would have hoped, but I think good time for a bye. Get the guys back. Price in particular, who got knocked out of the game with a concussion. I think Ellison was able to come back in, but I think it'll be good timing of rest for that. Let Rourke heal a little bit more. Adjust to having a new guard in there on the left side, and but I thought they still did some good things against a team that's still got a bunch of talent. Doesn't have the results that they would probably want after winning the national championship a year ago, but Michigan doesn't lack for talent, that's for sure. And I thought IU just an awesome scene to see on TV. Watched it again last night into this morning since we didn't get to hear the commentary and some of that stuff. Just a super exciting time to be there. And so I know as someone who lives in Ohio, nothing would make me happier to see them beat Ohio State here in a couple weeks. So lots of Ohio State fans around the office for sure.
I do, Andy, apologize that my son sent our singing video from the car as we were stalled in the parking lot of lot 11. My son and I broke into another. It wasn't quite Shafino, and I appreciate your.
Nothing could ever hold a candle to that. But
the Shafino celebration, but Brent and I, we were very happy exiting the stadium, and then we got locked in some gridlock, and we just turned on some music, and then he forwarded that to you. I apologize because you can't unsee that. I understand.
I know. I appreciate it though. I did do a well check on you guys. I knew it had been a long day, so I was asking whatever was to come. I was asking for it, but to wrap up things on the game today, I think if you told people at the at 11:59 that this is going to end in a 35-point win, everybody would be really happy and kind of move along. I think the way they got there was maybe not the easiest way to get to a 35-point win with the way they played in the first half, but I think the important part is, what lessons can be learned from that? How do we see them show up differently, both for South Carolina, but also some of these other bye games that they have at home and be able to really jump on people early and open the door then to get some of these other guys more playing time and things like that. So I think the response after what was probably a loud locker room at halftime was impressive. And I think it underscores the talent that's on this roster, the number of guys who can hurt you. And so that is an easy thing to remain excited about. Just got to build the habits and the consistency that you want to be able to see that are going to serve you well when you get into a lot tougher games in the Big Ten and in the battle for Atlantis. But overall net result of the game was a positive one, and so certainly take that away and into the rest of our Sundays as we go. So with that, we'll wrap things up here. I know it's getting close to the witching hour, as they say in the NFL on the red zone. So give everybody a chance to watch the end of those. I got a little bit of time to get ready for Eagles Cowboys, and we'll move on from there. So we'll be back. I guess I just do this as part of the outro here. A little rusty. All right. But that will do it for us today. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to substack.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logo. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops with you again on Saturday. Until then,
take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
I like everything about that.
All right. That will do it for us. Appreciate everybody in the chat mob joining us on a Sunday afternoon. And Hoosiers are 2-0. Football team's 10-0. Good way to roll into the new week. So, Coach, always a pleasure. And
always.
Not sure who will be on Saturday. I don't think I will be. I feel like Jared was maybe one of the only ones who said he could be on. So for those wondering where he's been, his payback may be having to do a solo show on Saturday after the South Carolina game. I think you said you were going to be there, though, actually. Is that right?
Yeah, I've sent in for media request if I'm able to make it here, unless I have to stay here. So I may be on if I'm at home, or if I'm down there, I may pop in after the show like I do when I'm down there in the game. So looking forward to it.
All right, well, we got almost a week to figure it out, so we'll be back then. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and we will talk soon.
Good night, everybody. Good afternoon. See you.